What's up guys? Today's video is going to be which big eyeshadow palette should I buy? Now, by no means am I telling you which one to buy. I'm just showing you some of the bigger eyeshadow palettes that I have and sharing some things with you so that if you are thinking about purchasing one of the larger eyeshadow palettes, at least you'll have a little bit of information about those palettes, or at least the ones that I have here today. That way you might be able to find out which one is right for you. So I am going to talk about a couple of the Morphe palettes. I have a Pure palette, a Lorac palette, and then I have the Jaclyn Hill palette. So, and I actually am going to do my eyeshadow look with the Jaclyn Hill palette today. So if you'd like to stay tuned for just a couple of minutes and see which eyeshadow look I create with that palette, then that will come a little bit later in this video. I'm also not going to use false eyelashes today. I'm finally going to see what all the hype is about with the Voluminous Lash Paradise mascara. So without further ado, let's get into these big eyeshadow palettes. So first I want to talk about these Morphe palettes. Now none of these palettes are new, but these are some of the older Morphe palettes. They're big. This one is the 35R. They do not have a mirror. This one in particular, the 35R, is a ton of brown neutral shades. So if you are a brown girl and just love brown eyeshadow, I think you would like this palette. Not quite half matte shades, and then half are these foil shades. You can create so many different brown or natural looks with this eyeshadow palette. I think that having a palette this big with this many brown shades is a little bit of an overkill, but if you're the kind of person that no matter what palette you buy, you always reach for those browns, then you might really like this one. So the next one is another Morphe palette. This is the 35B. Now this palette is a crazy color palette. So I got this mainly for my professional kit because I wanted to just have some more versatility to my eyeshadow looks if somebody did want. I primarily do makeup for weddings and special events, so it's very rare that you'll get somebody that wants a pink or blue eyeshadow color like this, but I mainly bought this for my kit. But if you are somebody who does want to play around with some funky colors and do some funky eyeshadow looks, I will also use this palette on myself whenever I am going to create maybe a holiday look. I have created a St. Patrick's Day look with the greens, and then on my Instagram I did have a photo of a red, white, and blue eyeshadow look that I did, and I got it from this palette. So if you like colors, want to play around with some colors, you can check out the Morphe 35B palette. So the next palette is going to be this Pure palette. Now I will say that I have loved this palette for a while now. I really like the feel and the packaging of the palette. I like that it does have a nice big mirror. The pan sizes are pretty standard for what would typically come in an eyeshadow palette, so I'm happy about that. There are plenty of shades, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so there's 18 shades here. I will say, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like there's 6, 7. Okay, so there's about 7 out of the 18 that are matte shades. The other ones are shimmer shades. Some of the darker shimmer shades I don't typically use as much. I mean, even though they are beautiful. I mean, this shade right here that I just dipped into is a really, really pretty shade. So all of the shades are really good. They have an extreme amount of payoff. They're creamy, they're not chalky. There's not a lot of fallout whenever you work with these shadows. I typically will create eyeshadow looks with these types of colors, you know, neutrals or kind of the rusty colors. I do kind of feel like there's this random blue in here, but I don't hate it. I love this palette. I have reached for it many times. So this is one of the smaller of the bigger eyeshadow palettes that I have today, but I figured it wasn't that much smaller than some of these bigger eyeshadow palettes. And as far as eyeshadow palettes go, this is more a bigger size than a standard eyeshadow palette sizes. I have loved this palette for a while now, and I would recommend this product. Okay, so next is the Lorac Mega Pro palette. Now this palette has a ton of shades. I'm not sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 32 shades. So this, as far as the palette goes, it's a nice palette. I like the feel of it. I like that it has the mirror in it. Now the shades though, first of all, whenever I was using this palette, the pan sizes are really small, so that if you did find a couple of colors that you liked in this palette, then the pan sizes aren't as big as you might get from another eyeshadow palette. The thing that really kind of disappoints me about this palette, I guess, is that a lot of the shades are so similar. Basically, you have your matte shades up in these first 2 rows, and then you have your more shimmer shades, or there's a couple of looks like foil shades in here. Now, the thing that really kind of disappoints me about this palette is it just seems like there's so many shades that are the same. So, you know, I mean, there's just a lot of neutral browns in this shade. There's a lot of the purple. I think that you could have plenty of versatility with this palette, despite the fact that some of the shades look very similar. And the shadows themselves are very creamy. It has plenty of pigment payoff, so I'm not mad about that. These shimmer shades are really, really pretty. So they're very pretty shades. I just think that if you are going to have a bigger palette in your makeup collection, this takes up a lot of room, and it's just not one that I feel like I reach for that often. The biggest eyeshadow palette that I have in my collection that I reach for more than any of the other ones is actually the Jaclyn Hill palette by Morphe. Now, I do feel like, I can't be 100% positive, but I do feel like the shades in the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette they do have a different consistency, or they're formulated differently than the other Morphe shadows. So I do think that she worked with them one-on-one to create these shadows. And I will say that whenever the palette itself is really nice. It has the names of the shadows on the back here. It does not have the names of the shadows on the inside of the palette, right underneath the shadows, which I think is sometimes really helpful whenever you're talking about eyeshadows and which color you're using. But for most people, that's not a make or break. It also does not have a mirror, which whenever you have a big eyeshadow palette like this, it's not like I'm going to be holding this huge thing up typically while I'm using this palette, so that is also not a make or break for me. I just really love the colors in this palette. You can create so many different looks with this palette. There are stuff in there for neutral girls. There's the colors in there that I like, where the neutrals and some of the kind of rusty browns. I feel like there's an appropriate amount of matte to shimmer shades and foil shades in this palette. I just feel like you can create a complete look with this palette. Everything from the brow bone to the smoky eye, as dramatic as you want to be or as chill as you want to be. So I feel like this is just a really good go-to palette. So I am going to be using this palette today for my eyeshadow look. So I am going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to be using the Morphe 441 brush. It's just a nice fluffy brush, and I'm going to go in. I've already primed and put setting powder onto my eyes, so I'm going to go ahead and I think for today I'm just going to go in and do the look that I would typically do on a day-to-day basis with this eyeshadow palette. So I'm going to go into this color right here, which looks like Faint. And I'm going to work this above the crease all the way across the lid. Now, I do feel like this palette doesn't necessarily have as much pigment payoff as some of the other palettes. I think the eyeshadow palette that I have talked about today that has the most amount of pigment payoff, I think, would be this Pure palette. But this palette has enough pigment payoff that it makes me happy. Go into a little bit darker of this color right here, which looks like Hunts. That's better. I think Jaclyn Hill did a great job with these shadows. She is coming out with some more eyeshadow palettes. I believe they're called the Vault. And those are again another collaboration with Morphe. So I would be excited to try out those palettes. Each one is going to be a smaller palette, so I think it's going to be travel friendly or makeup bag friendly, which is nice. But this video is all about these big palettes and which one should you add to your collection. Okay, so next I'm going to go into the shade Roxanne, and I am going to be taking more of a crease brush. I'm taking the M507 and I'm working right in that crease, right underneath where I was working with the transition shade. And I'm gonna go just work. I just lightly dipped this brush into the pan, and the amount of color that came off onto the eyelid is really impressive. So I don't want you guys to think that this is not a good pigmented eyeshadow palette. It definitely is. It's just not as much as some of the other eyeshadow palettes that I have in my collection, but that is okay because sometimes some of those highly pigmented shadows, especially if you're a beginner, are really hard to blend out. You have to work for a really long time to blend them out, and I think that that just kind of discourages people. So this is a great palette for, I feel like, any type of, beginner, pro, anything in between. I do really recommend this palette. So I'm just going to pop this Roxanne shade on the other lid. Okay, so I don't even know if I was saying the right shades, because the shades, and this is what I was talking about with the names being on the back as opposed to right underneath the pan, is, it says on the back right here, it looks like it would be Pool Party, which is that teal color, when in fact it is over here. So that's what just gets a little bit confusing. So I don't even know if I was saying the right shades, but I will try to have those in the video whenever I edit it. But yeah, so anyway, I'm going to take this shade right here, which it looks kind of like a dark mahogany color, and I'm going to take it just with that same brush and work it over here in the outer corner. Okay, once I have that on, I am going to take a clean Morphe M44 brush and just blend out any harsh edges, just making sure, taking a very light hand, making sure everything is well blended and there's no harsh edges. Next, I'm going to go ahead and smoke out the under eye. I'm going to take that shade that I was calling Roxanne, which I think it just so happens to be in the middle. It might actually be, but I'm going to take that shadow and just smoke it right underneath the lower lash line. Okay, and this is what I was talking about, how this palette is so versatile. So I am going to take, and you know, it does matter though what brushes that you use. So I don't want you to think that you can create a whole bunch of different looks if you only have 2 eyeshadow brushes in your makeup collection. You might actually have to invest in a few brushes because I feel like the brush matters. The density of the brush, the size of the brush, it matters how much pigment that you pick up or how much product that you pick up, which in turn makes a difference with how it's going to look on the eye. So I am going to actually create my eyeliner or use some of the shadow as my eyeliner with a smaller brush. But first I want to go ahead and pack on some of the shimmer shades onto the lid. So I think I'm going to go in just on the outer part of the inner lid, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to take this shade right here and I'm going to just slightly bring it into the middle of the lid. I always reach for this gold shade. So next I'm going to reach for this gold shimmer shade and I'm going to pop that onto the lid. Alright, again taking that clean Morphe brush and blending any harsh edges, making sure everything is nice and blended. Okay, next what I was talking about. So I'm going to take this small e.l.f. brush and I'm going to go into this deep brown shade right here. And I'm just going to take the tip of my brush and dip it into this color and I'm going to brush it along the lash line to create my liner. I've been doing this a lot lately instead of using liner and I really like it. It's just a much softer look. Alright, I'm also going to take it onto the lower lash line. Alright, last but not least, I am going to take this creamy shimmer shade up here and pop it into the corners of the eye and the brow bone. Alright, I am going to put on some of this seriously hyped Voluminous Lash Paradise mascara. This has been all over YouTube. It's by L'Oreal. And I'm really not sure what the hype is about, but we're going to find out today. So I am going to not put on any false lashes. I am just going to put on this mascara. And we're going to see how it goes. I might check back in with you guys later on this evening and let you know how it wore since this is my first time wearing it. So far, I kind of feel like it's clumping a little bit. I don't necessarily think, I mean, I don't feel like I went into the tube twice and I just don't think that it gave me as full of a lash as I would typically get with another mascara. and it is a little bit clumpy. We're gonna see. We're gonna see. I am interested to see how this does wear. I believe it is waterproof. Yes, waterproof. So waterproof mascara. This side is not clumping as bad as this side, but this side is always my good side. I feel like this eyeshadow, or these eyelashes always do a little bit better. Okay, so the Jaclyn Hill palette eyeshadow look that I just used today is on. The L'Oreal Lash Paradise mascara is on. I am going to check back with you guys at the end of the day to let you know how this wore and what exactly I think of this mascara. Like I said, this is not a new mascara. This is just a seriously hyped mascara. There are so many YouTubers, so many people that love this mascara, and at first impression of it, I'm not quite sure what the hype is about. So I do want to check in with you guys later on to let you know what I think about that. But this video was about the big eyeshadow palettes, or the large eyeshadow palettes. If I had to recommend just one of these big eyeshadow palettes, I would go with the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette. So those are my thoughts. I hope this helped you out. So I hope you liked this video, and if you are new here, I hope you consider subscribing to this channel. Thank you so much. Okay guys, it is about 8 o'clock at night. I am about to take my makeup off for the day, but I wanted to make sure I just checked back in with you guys to let you know how this mascara wore. I do think that there wasn't as much smudging in the under eye as I would get if I wore another mascara. Sometimes, even with waterproof mascaras, I will get, you know, just some black smudging underneath my eye, and it's definitely worse if I was to wear a more moisturizing foundation or a BB cream or CC cream. And today I did, you know, put foundation underneath my eyes. I set it with some translucent powder, so I set myself up for success to not get the mascara smudging. But I will say that there was no black smudgy underneath my eye, so I am happy about that. I mean, overall, I think that it's a pretty good mascara. I'm still a little bit confused as to what the hype is with the L'Oreal Lash Paradise. So yeah, I mean, I have no complaints. I will continue to use it. So yeah, I hope you guys have a good night, and thanks for watching.